What's up, fellas? In the first video of the day, we're going to be talking about a rumor that's going around that Lonzo Ball could possibly be traded to the LA Clippers, or more so, I guess I should say, the Clippers are interested in acquiring Lonzo Ball. We're going to talk about that fit. We're going to talk about how that would possibly work, how they could acquire him, and some issues that I personally see with this deal, potentially getting Lonzo to the Clippers. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every single day on this channel, so it's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube, so consider subscribing. You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well if you're enjoying them, and you can check me out at various socials in a Linktree link down in the description below. If you're new here, by the way, what's up? My name is Tucker, and with those things said, let's go and get started. So this rumor has been kind of going around over the last couple of days, and I think kind of the reason why this player and this team are connected is pretty clear. LA needs some help in the backcourt. I don't think that they want to go into the postseason in a position where they're relying on Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams, right? So they're clearly trying to upgrade in the backcourt, and Lonzo, up until a couple of weeks ago, was one of the more available guards on the market. And from a fit standpoint, it makes a decent amount of sense, right? I think he's a talented young player. He's a guy that's still really kind of trying to figure out exactly what his role is in the league, but would certainly be an upgrade for that Clippers roster and definitely provides them a good amount of upside. You know, if Lonzo Ball becomes the player that he should be this season and moving forward for LA, that's a huge plus for them. So I understand the connection there, the need for help in the backcourt. And for New Orleans, there's a reason why they were initially shopping Lonzo a couple of weeks ago, although they've apparently cooled off on that, is because he's a restricted free agent at the end of the season. They're not positive how he fits in with this team, and if they can get some value out of him and not have to, risk either losing him in the offseason or paying him a ton of money to retain him, getting some value out of him right now is a decent idea. Now, in terms of the fit specifically in LA, I do have some questions, because in the last handful of months in Lonzo's time in New Orleans, he's turned into a bit of a different player where he's not as much of an on-ball guy, right? I mean, Brandon Ingram, Zion, those guys are the ones making the plays. Those guys are the ones doing a lot of the playmaking. And Lonzo has been shifted not to an entirely off-ball role, but to more of an off-ball role than we've been accustomed to from him, or at least I guess we would have expected from someone that is generally considered a point guard. So I think Lonzo is clearly more of a combo guard at this point, and what has really raised his value over the last couple of weeks is the fact that he's been shooting the basketball extremely well, and he can defend, which has been the case, since probably his second year in the league. So although I do think he provides a decent amount of backcourt help to this Clippers team, if you're thinking that this is going to solve their point guard issue, I'm not positive that's the case, because Lonzo, in this recent stretch of play where he's played really well, has been more of an off-ball guy than he'd been in the past. So that's something to keep in mind if you're a Clippers fan and you're thinking Lonzo is going to come in and start running the team. I'm not sure that's the case. He's not a great guy at kind of getting to the rim and making plays, right? Like, he's good in transition, can do some stuff in ball screens, but he's not going to be someone that's really doing a ton of, getting to the rim and playmaking for others. So just kind of clearing that up if you think that's actually the case. And I do think that's kind of the player this team needs. I think Lonzo's ability to play on and off the ball is a pretty clean fit with a team in LA that obviously, Paul George and Kawhi control a lot of the action. But at the same time, I do think there are times when, in order for the offense to flow a little bit better, they do need someone that can attack in the backcourt. And Lonzo can do that a little bit, but maybe not to the extent that this team really needs. So I think that part of the fit is a little bit questionable, but I understand them trying to make the move. My big question mark with this, and why I'm a little bit confused about this rumor specifically, is how exactly LA is planning on adding Lonzo Ball to the roster. I've done some research on this. I don't really have any concrete answers as to how exactly they're planning on making this trade, given a significant lack of assets in terms of draft picks, in terms of players that the Pelicans would be interested in. Now, whenever I've brought this up, people have told me, oh, well, Luke Kennard could potentially be an asset. Luke Kennard is far from an asset at this point. I think he's talented. I think he can shoot. I think there's a little bit of playmaking stuff you can sprinkle in there for him. But given his contract, given his play for the most part this season, I don't think he's someone that New Orleans is going to see as an asset on that contract. They'd probably rather just keep Lonzo and roll the dice on bringing him back in the offseason rather than taking on Luke Kennard, taking on that contract and a handful of second-round picks. Well, then you move on and you think, okay, well, what about someone like, Zubac? Would he potentially be offered in a trade? I don't think that LA is going to be looking to make that move either. That would further thin what was already a relatively thin five-man, rotation. Rotation at the 5 spot, not 5-man rotation. So that is not really on the table for me either. And again, when you look at the draft picks, when you look at a whole bunch of different things, I'm confused as to how LA is going to make this work. Some of the things I've read have said that they could do, expirings and second round picks. If I'm New Orleans, I would just rather keep Lonzo or look for a better offer. I don't see why I would be obligated to trade him to the LA Clippers for a handful of second round picks and expirings, which Lonzo already is in expiring. So ultimately, I think that's going to be the hang up here, is like, where does the compensation come from? Where does these significant assets come from LA in exchange for Lonzo Ball? I'm not sure. And really, like, if I'm New Orleans, right, when LA calls me like, hey, we're interested in Lonzo, we're looking to, upgrade in the backcourt, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Are you interested in Eric Bledsoe at all? Because I'd rather keep Lonzo. Does Eric Bledsoe strike your fancy at all? Is that someone that you would be interested in grabbing? Because if you want to give me expirings and second round picks for Eric Bledsoe, then we can have a conversation. I don't think that Lonzo is in that category of expirings and second round picks. Yes, he's had some struggles in his career, but he's a younger guy that's been playing better lately. Maybe a month ago, that would have been an offer that was a bit more compelling, but right now, I don't think that's even a remote possibility. So ultimately, this rumor kind of confuses me, but I do think overall, it makes sense from like a fit standpoint, from compensation wise, it's a bit of an issue. And as we kind of talk about the Clippers as a whole here, because I think that's where most of the interest lies. The Pelicans are going to accumulate assets for players that they feel like they need to be getting rid of. That's going to be the case, whether it's Lonzo or whoever. But for the Clippers, I do think that despite some of the weird stuff that's happening in crunch time with this group, despite how inconsistent they can be at times, I do think there's plenty of talent here. And I do think that once you get to the postseason and what's going to be a very, very weird rest of the season as well as postseason, having Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on your team is still a really, really good thing, and still makes for a true contender and a team that maybe might not be like at the top of your list of contenders. But if something happens with the Lakers injury-wise or protocol-wise, or something happens with the Nets protocol-wise or injury-wise, you start thinking a little bit more about the Clippers as possibly a team that could do something. Now, I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say that they're going to win the title or anything. Did that last year. That didn't quite work out. But I don't think that this is a team that can be completely dismissed, which is why the possibility of them going out trying to add something in the backcourt is interesting. Having said that, I don't think Lonzo is going to be the guy. I don't think New Orleans has interest in Patrick Beverley or Lou Williams or a handful of second-round picks. And finding a team that is interested in what LA has to offer for a backcourt player that would actually help their roster is going to be difficult. I would expect them to make some kind of move, because I don't see any motivation for them to just kind of keep the roster they have. It's fine. It's good enough to make some noise in the postseason. But if they're looking at becoming like a top tier contender, that backcourt definitely needs to be upgraded. So they're definitely a team to keep an eye on. For some of the fringe backcourt prospects, around the league, maybe you could talk yourself into some kind of Evan Fournier thing. I do think they need a little bit more of a scoring punch, because their offense overall lacks flow. I don't think that Ty Lue has really brought anything groundbreaking to the roster. Not that I would have expected him to in terms of, play calling or offense or anything like that. And it's a lot of like your turn, my turn between Paul George and Kawhi. And it's just tough. I mean, the Celtics can attest to this. It's really tough to have your offense be so centralized around two wings that are above average, but not great, not fantastic, not top tier playmakers. It's really tough to build your team around that offensively. Defensively, it works well, and I think that they're going to be a really good defensive team in the postseason, but offensively, without a true like alpha dog, point guard, shooting guard guy that's going to come down the floor and is going to facilitate ball screens every time, it's really tough to build a competent offense, really tough to build a top-tier offense, especially once we get into the postseason. Despite the shot-making credibility of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, that backcourt spot has to be upgraded, I think, for them to be considered, one of the top two contenders in the league, which I think they have the talent to do, and they have the opportunity to add to this roster to make themselves, a more legit contender for that. But for me personally, this backcourt spot has to be upgraded. Let me know down in the comment section below where you guys could see this team making some moves. Maybe we'll do a trade machine on it. I'm still looking to do one more trade machine before the trade deadline kind of wraps up here. So let me know down in the comment section below what Clippers trade ideas you guys have, whether it be for guards or whatever the case may be. I think this is a really interesting team. I think this is a team that overall is being a bit overlooked, despite some of the weirdness with the clutch numbers and the overall probably lack of chemistry in this team, and the fact that it's basically the same roster as last year, despite the Harold, Ibaka flip. I think it's a really interesting group. It's one that I want to kind of continue to keep an eye on throughout the rest of the season. But yeah, that's going to be the end of the first video of the day, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. As I said, upload twice a day, every day on the channel's most consistent NBA content on YouTube. Consider subscribing. You can leave a like rating, and you can check me out at various socials and a Linktree link down in the description below. With those things said, hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.